Don Coyhis, you're from the Wellbriety movement, and you're in Waskaganiang, Lac du Flambeau, talking about forgiving the unforgivable, about the boarding school movement and how it's important to bury that hatchet and to make peace. What did you teach us today?
Well, we know that these boarding schools that was implemented or funded by the United States government, its goal was to assimilate the Native people to the dominant culture. And so there's a punishment system went off, they spoke the language to do away with the culture. And the boarding school system worked, except the thing that didn't work was it left a trauma within our communities that's tied. We sometimes think what happened then was then, now is now, but that's not true. Spiritually, what happened then, the punishment system, is handed down intergenerationally, which we call intergenerational trauma. And so now we know that many of the issues we have in our communities, if we don't heal from the trauma, then we won't heal the current communities. They'll keep surfacing. So our goal on this is to bring awareness. We're making a documentary of the whole journey, and when that journey is done, we'll do a mass distribution of the story of the boarding schools told by the people from the communities, from their point of view on what happened, and then to broadcast that throughout the whole United States.
The Celtic people know how to grieve. I've listened to Celtic women keen or wail for the loss of the cod out on the Grand Banks, because the cod are going away. They've been over-harvested. And the Celtic people, of course, are tribal people that know how to speak to their sadness. And you said in Indian country, we're still learning how to do that. Tell us more.
Well, one of the reasons for that is, I would guess the starting point might be in 1800 there was a philosophy came out called Manifest Destiny, and what Manifest Destiny did is it gave the dominant culture the permission to take everything, and so they just all of a sudden changed their beliefs that they owned the land, they owned the people. That's when they started moving the Cherokees, the Trail of Tears, and rearranging the whole structure of Indian community, was because they believed they had the right to do that. And so the assault was so great on many of the tribes, to tell you the extent of the assault, by 1920, 99% of the native population had been wiped out. I mean, if you just think about that, that's what's called genocide. So the assault was the re-education of the children in the boarding school, but it also was responsible for a large number of deaths and things that happened. So what happened was, this small group of people, if you could imagine 1% remained, then there was no place for them to go. So what they said is they became very isolated, so it was keep the secret, don't tell anybody, shh. And so a secret system came in. What you were retrained to do is to not grieve. You didn't cry in front of anybody, you didn't let anybody know you're hurting, you told no one nothing. And of course, out of that 1%, they had children, and they taught their children to that. So pretty soon, we don't know how to grieve. All we know how to do is to hold that hurt in, hold those things inside of ourselves, except that's our problem, is if you can't grieve, then it means you're carrying it around. If you're carrying it around, then you're passing on to your children. You teach your children not to cry, not to grieve, then they grow up and they teach their grandchildren. Hence, connected to I believe that one of the biggest issues now in our native communities is our inability to grieve. We don't know how to do it.
There's a petition on the table here requesting President Obama to apologize. And if he did that, he would join the Prime Minister of Australia and Canada in saying something that's very important in recovery, which is, I'm sorry. Why is forgiveness, why is apology important in the healing process?
Well, the elders gave us 4 teachings and help us to do this. In the East is recognize, in the South is acknowledge, in the West is forgive, in the North is to change. Recognize, acknowledge, forgive, and change. So in order to change, you have to recognize what this trauma is. Second is, doesn't it make sense to, if it happened to you, to have the one who did it say, I'm sorry, that did happen. And it's not about suing as much as it is about an acknowledgement that it did happen. Then once that happened, we can go into the forgiveness. And they give us 4 directions of forgiveness: is forgiving the unforgivable, forgiving yourself, and forgiving others. So they give us the teachings to do this, and then to change. And that change means to come back to the culture, to come back to that place on how we used to think, come back to the ceremonies, the traditions, the culture, the knowledge, cycle of life knowledge, and all of that. Because when we had that, we didn't have problems with alcoholism. We didn't have teen suicides. We didn't have the violence. So there was a period in our lives as a people when we didn't have this. When the boarding school system, the assault, what they did is took our spirituality away, and we've been in trouble ever since. So we have to reverse what they did. They took away the culture, we got to restore it. They took away the language, we got to redo it, relearn it. They destroyed the family structure, we got to rebuild it. They took away a way of life, and so we got to bring back those ways of life. And most of those ways of life are known. They know how to do that. And Dene people call it the beauty way. Onondagas call it the good mind. Anishinaabe teachings. They are all here and they're alive and well. We just got to learn how to live them again.
This is Nick Vanderplan, Don Coyhis for Indian Country TV. Miigwech.
Thanks. Miigwech.